This is all the lost media found in 2025. At least at the time of making this video, these are all the lost media found that I thought were interesting enough to include in our ongoing series. So this is a supercut of all those videos, along with some additional pieces of lost media, which ended up being found a little later on in the year. So at least as far as January through November goes, this is the lost media found in 2025. Aw, Real Monsters pitch pilot. Aw, Real Monsters is one of the more interesting shows in Nickelodeon's catalog. Created in the 90s, it ran for 4 seasons and 52 episodes over the course of 1994 to late 1997, following a group of 3 monsters named Ickis, Crumb, and Oblina, who go to a school located under the city dump where they learn how to scare humans, with the main antagonist of the series being the headmaster of the Monster Academy, the Gromble. Like most cartoon programs, the series had an original pitch pilot, which was used to shop around to networks and showcase the design of the characters, tone, and production concepts behind the show. It was created in 1993 by the Klasky Supo Company, simply titled Real Monsters, and was not made available for the public to view, as it was never aired, and instead had a different pilot when the show first came out, called The Switching Hour, which followed essentially the same story beats as the original unaired pilot. But for a while, it was unknown if the pilot was a standard 11-minute segment, as each episode usually had 2 to fill the 22-minute runtime, or if it was possibly shorter or even longer, possibly filling the entire runtime. All there was for years were a few screenshots and some short clips which eventually were removed from YouTube, thanks to the channel showcasing them being terminated. However, on February 15th of 2025, the entire pilot was uploaded to Reddit by user Oprah Windu, revealing it to have been an almost 9-minute runtime with the credits included. The Cigarette and the Weed. Ralph Bakshi is a name you might have heard in the animation scene, being a well-known and controversial animation veteran who's worked on many well-known projects and films over the course of his career, starting all the way back in the 50s, creating his debut adult animated film, Fritz the Cat, in 1972, and later an animated adaptation of The Lord of the Rings back in 1978. He also even had a guest appearance on the Ren and Stimpy Adult Party cartoon. But one of his more obscure works was an animated short from 1981 called The Cigarette and the Weed. About 3 minutes in length and meant to be played before full feature films in theaters, it tells a short tale of a weed on a street corner who is approached by a cigarette butt. Eventually, the two become friends and share a few words, before the cigarette rolls into a puddle of water and is extinguished, seemingly dying. The movie was shown at a few film festivals, and even made a cameo appearance in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch from 1982. But eventually, the film would become quite obscure and lost to time. That was until the year of 2025, on February 25th, when the creator, Ralph Bakshi, would release the short in its entirety on Twitter, aka X. African Skies. Taking place in a post-apartheid South Africa in the 90s, this drama series aired on the Family Channel for 2 seasons and 52 episodes, following the lives of 2 young boys, Jam Matiba and Rory Dutton, who come from distinctly different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, but come together and become friends as they embark on numerous adventures. It seems as though the series was quite obscure, or at least didn't see much airings outside of its initial run in the early 90s, which led to most of it being lost over time, with only 4 episodes of the 52 surviving before 2025, 2 episodes from Season 1 and 2 from Season 2. These episodes had been acquired by a YouTuber named Freelights Lost and Found, who had purchased a compilation VHS tape containing a few of the episodes which he posted to YouTube. Freelight was also then later able to get in contact with the actor who portrayed Rory in the series, Simon James, who was able to get approval from one of the producers to release the entire series to YouTube, which is exactly what ended up happening on January 30th, 2025, where the full 52-episode series was uploaded to the African Skies official YouTube channel, with all the episodes now being available officially for viewing. Galactic Patrol Lensman Lost Episodes. Galactic Patrol Lensman is an older anime series from the 80s, which, interestingly enough, is based on an American novel series called Lensman, written by Edward Elmer Doc Smith from 1948 to 1954. But even before the release of this series, there was an animated movie adaptation called Lensman: Secret of the Lens, which came out in 1984 and even got an English dub in 1990, receiving mixed reception after it came out. And to add to the confusion, there was a compilation film made as well called Lensman: Power of the Lens, which combined episodes 1 through 3 and 5 through 6 of the English dub by Harmony Gold USA. As for the show itself, it aired from October 1984 to March of 1985, for a total of 25 episodes, and shared names taken from the book series as well as some of the rough plot beats and themes, but was vastly different generally as an adaptation, with a lot of creative liberties taken, which upset the Smith estate. The series takes place in the distant future where there is a large-scale intergalactic conflict between the Galactic Patrol and the Boscone, an evil criminal organization, following the protagonist, Kimball Kinnison, who becomes a lensman in the Galactic Patrol, an elite member of the Force who can use a lens which grants him certain special abilities. The reason the show eventually became lost and pretty obscure is likely because of the lukewarm reception, coupled with the fact that only a few episodes were ever dubbed and only released in that compilation movie format, and in Japan, only episodes 1 through 6 were ever released physically, leaving the rest to be lost over time after they had aired. Eventually though, most episodes of the show were able to be recovered, and by 2023, only the 24th and 25th episode of the show were missing, with these last two being located on December 29th, 2024. So yeah, I'm cheating a little bit with this one as this was found last year technically, just barely, but hey, close enough. Riddle Blue Lost Episodes. Riddle Blue is a now partially lost Korean adaptation of the popular early 2000s, late 90s kids show Blue's Clues that ran on Nickelodeon, featuring a dog called Blue and her owner Steve, with the children's series being an educational show to help kids develop problem-solving skills through the use of paw print clues left behind by Blue for Steve and the audience to figure out as they watch. The show was a raging success in terms of both sheer viewership and cultural impact, and is now considered one of the best children's programs around. But circling back to the lost media here, there was a Korean adaptation made starting in 2000 that aired on South Korean TV network KBS2, translated as either Riddle Blue or Mystery Blue, with the show ending on November 8th, 2001, with a total of 33 episodes being produced. The show was pretty similar overall, except it obviously featured a different host, a Korean comedian named Hyun Sub Shim, who played the character of Uncle Wow. For a while, not much footage from the show was available online, despite there being scarce and obscure home media releases of the show in South Korea. The first episode of the show was found in June of 2020 when it was uploaded to YouTube, which would be later followed the next month by 4 more episodes being uploaded to a Google Photos album and were later archived. But after this, the search sort of went dead, until on February 4th, 2025, an additional 7 episodes of the series would be located on a Google Drive, and have since then also been uploaded to the Internet Archive. Today, the show unfortunately still has plenty of partially lost and fully lost episodes, with only 11 full episodes being available and 2 others which have partial footage. But given enough time, we might just eventually have this full adaptation. Portal G4 series. G4 is one of those old school television networks that I personally have a bit of nostalgia for. I didn't so much watch the video game stuff, which was what a lot of the series were centered around, but I was there for Ninja Warrior, a Japanese obstacle course and game show known as Sasuke in Japan, first airing in 1997 and later made into an American series called American Ninja Warrior, but that's neither here nor there. They had a lot of other video game related segments and shows, such as one called Attack of the Show, which featured news about games, pop culture, and tech. They also had a show for game reviews called X-Play. But one of their earliest forays into the gaming landscape on their network was a Machinima series, which aired from May 2002 to February 2004. Machinimas, for those unaware, are series or films, usually scripted productions, made through the use of video games or game engines. Think something like Red vs. Blue, but this series, Portal, was one of the first of its kind, and had nothing to do with the Valve game of the same name, which wouldn't be released until 2007. This machinima focused on different games, mostly MMORPGs, and followed a man named Dave, who looks into many different online games with the help of his AI assistant Val. 60 episodes in total were produced before the show was cancelled in 2004, although it would continue to re-air via reruns until sometime in 2008. After this, the episodes would become extremely rare and hard to come by, and only a few episodes were ever preserved. Until in January of 2025, a user called GavHell was able to locate the remaining lost episodes, now making this piece of machinima and gaming history finally found and available to all. Rock Feud unaired pilot. Almost everyone knows of the popular game show Family Feud, in which families compete against each other in answering trivia questions by predicting the most popular answers to a set of given questions, which rewards points. The family with the most points at the end wins. The show has been going since 1976, and has gone through various hosts and networks over the years, including having Steve Harvey as the present host of the show. But have you ever heard of the obscure spin-off project which was cancelled called The Rock Feud? Likely not. This spin-off would have been an edgier version, featuring, instead of families, different rock bands competing against each other, hosted by comedian Johnny A. Sanchez. The show was initially greenlit but ended up being scrapped after a pilot was produced that never aired, thanks likely to the cancellation of a similar program called Rock and Roll Jeopardy! Despite the pilot being filmed, however, it was very obscure and hard to come by, with only a short clip being found initially in December of 2024, uploaded by YouTube channel Wink Martindale, as in the American game show host and radio personality. And only about a month later, the entire pilot will be uploaded to the same channel on January 10th, 2025 for all the world to see. Astro Code. Astro Code is a very old puzzle game released back in 1984 for the ZX Spectrum, an old-school 8-bit home computer first introduced in 1982. The game was developed by Finsbury Software and was made alongside other titles like Prince, Princess and the Wicked Witch, and Andromeda Trophy, which were also lost media. The gameplay is fairly simple, given when it came out, and has you repairing a spaceship via puzzles, with a review of the game saying, quote, "An absorbing code-breaking game, requiring a high degree of skill and logic, tantalizing and frustrating, not for the easily discouraged." It seems the game was relatively obscure, as not a lot of information exists online, and it likely only released in the UK. However, thanks to user Don Clawleone, on January 5th, 2025, the game was rediscovered, alongside other titles for the ZX Spectrum, and was uploaded to the Internet Archive. The Invincible Space Streaker English Dub. The Invincible Space Streaker, also called The Little Super Kids, is a live-action Taiwanese film from 1977, classified as a tokusatsu film, a Japanese term used to specify movies that use a lot of practical special effects. The film itself didn't end up becoming lost, rather it was the obscure international release which had an English dub. This version was released on home media in the 80s by an Indonesian distributor called Pan Video, because interestingly enough, Mandarin dubbed films were actually banned in Indonesia at the time, and so it had to be dubbed into English. This version of the film, however, didn't end up being preserved, and became a piece of forgotten lost media, until a collector was able to get his hands on it by helping with a digitization of an Indonesian Betamax tape, which was then uploaded to the Internet Archive on January 2nd, 2025. The $64,000 Question Pilot. One of the earlier game shows in the history of American broadcasts, and quite notable for being involved in controversy in the 50s, is the $64,000 Question, which ran on CBS from 1955 to 1958, having a spin-off in the late 50s as well called the $64,000 Challenge. The show was inspired by the success of Take It or Leave It from 1940, which had a similar premise and was originally a radio show. It involved the simple but easy to get behind premise of contestants answering multiple choice questions that would get progressively harder as the episode progresses, earning cash prizes until the final question and grand prize of $64,000. The show was abruptly canceled in 1958, however, after a scandal in which it was revealed that contestants on the show had been given the answers beforehand in order to boost ratings, which came to light when a contestant, Herb Stempel, testified before Congress, revealing that he was told to intentionally lose, getting a question wrong in a dramatic and staged performance. The show ended up being revived in 1976 for a spin-off called The $128,000 Question, but this version was fairly short-lived, only lasting from 1976 to 1978 before ending, due to it not being a huge hit as its predecessor was. However, this wasn't the only attempt at bringing back the show, as there was a reboot in the works in 2000, with a pilot even being filmed in LA in April of that year. The show was hosted by Greg Gumbel and was slightly different, despite sharing the original name, with there being 2 players that are chosen and asked questions. Getting one wrong leads to a deduction of $1,000, while a correct answer grants $1,000 to the player. The first player to reach $8,000 moves on to the next round, in which this winning contestant now must answer a series of multiple choice questions, just like in the original, chosen from a series of subcategories by the player, at which point they then have 30 seconds to answer questions, which give additional payouts until you get to the grand question worth $64,000. It's ultimately unclear why the pilot was never broadcast and the show never picked up, but it's possible that it was passed over in favor of a different show, possibly Survivor, which came out around the same time and went on to be a major success. Given it was never officially aired, the pilot never saw the light of day and became a piece of game show lost media, until yet again, Wink Martindale uploaded the episode to his YouTube channel on December 29th, 2024, as a tribute to the host of the show, Greg Gumbel, who passed away on December 27th. Again, just barely missed the 2025 deadline, but I still thought it was worth mentioning. Big Brother. This is not related to the American TV reality series, but rather is an old PC game developed by Media X, based on the famous novel by George Orwell, 1984, and was meant to be a sequel to the events of the book. However, the game was never released and ended up being cancelled in 1998, despite it being showcased at E3 that year. It was a first-person adventure title in which you play as the character of Eric Blair, the true birth name of George Orwell, which was actually just his pen name in which he wrote the novel and other works involving social critiques, with most of the gameplay consisting of you navigating different areas and solving puzzles while interacting with various NPCs and environmental obstacles. The plot mainly revolved around Eric trying to rescue his girlfriend from the clutches of the Thought Police, before becoming entrenched in the world of underground hacking and fighting against the oppressive Big Brother government itself. The levels were said to be very long at up to 5 hours, with 12 levels in total, which is quite a lot of content, but apparently as much as 60 total were planned allegedly. The game was showcased briefly at E3 in 1998 and was given a release date of September of that year and a price tag of $29.95. Even winning some awards before the game even came out, and tragically was scrapped for unknown reasons after it was delayed a year, before Media X eventually lost the rights altogether. The game was also said to have been quite advanced for the time in terms of its 3D world, first-person perspective, and facial animations, and the game was even said to have been mostly completed, sitting at around 70% done. And for decades, that's all we had on this long-lost title. No builds of the game, just the footage from the demo at E3, as well as some screenshots and artwork for the project. Until this year, on March 1st of 2025, a build of the game was uploaded to the Internet Archive by user Shed Troll, dated January 4th, 1999. The Golden Bat is Here. The Golden Bat is Here is a Japanese film based on the Golden Bat character, originally released in May of 1972 by Toho Studios, that was, and still today remains, quite obscure. It was apparently only ever released during a short theatrical run, and never received any home media release. The only thing that was available from the film, and was still incredibly rare and hard to come by, was the soundtrack, which was released, but only has a few copies that are known to exist today. Besides that, there was a small snippet from the film, taken of a direct VHS recording of a TV broadcast, but at some point, this footage also became lost after it was taken down. The movie featured the Japanese pop culture character of Ogon Bat, also called Phantom Man or Golden Bat in English, who became popular after debuting in Kamishibai, Japanese paper theater, and is said to be one of the world's first superhero characters. The film depicted the history of Japanese paper theater, showing the rise of the character and its popularity with children, and evolved over the years as Kamishibai became obsolete with the rise of other storytelling mediums, such as television. The film in its entirety was located this year after it was posted by Lost Media Wiki user Maxwell Breesy on February 28, 2025. The Suicide Sheik. What if I told you that the iconic creepypasta, SuicideMouse.avi, wasn't a piece of fiction, but rather a real Disney cartoon? I'm sure you wouldn't believe me, and I doubt I would either if someone told me this. Until this year, when something all too similar was actually found. A 1929 Disney short featuring Mickey Mouse's precursor and one of their most prominent animated cartoon characters, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, in which the character in question attempts to kill himself in numerous ways. Being that it is one of the earliest known Oswald shorts, it fell into obscurity over the almost century that it's existed, and eventually, like many of the other early Disney animated short films, became lost media. Until in 2019, a man named Ray Langston managed to track down a reel of the cartoon, but the footage was not made available to the public, and was instead held in state archives until the film entered the public domain, which, you guessed it, happened this year, and on January 1st of 2025, this fever dream of a short was released to the public. The plot of the short consists of Oswald and his girlfriend, Hortensia the cat, frolicking through a field of flowers, until she eventually rejects him after he says something to her. It's unclear exactly what's being said because there is no audible dialogue, just some thought bubbles, but it's thought that he may have been asking her to marry him. Either way, Oswald's heart is broken, leading him to try and end his own life by having a safe land on his head, shooting himself in the face with a cannon, and even hanging himself. All of these attempts fail, however, due to him being a lucky rabbit, and he finally stops after he realizes that Hortensia's apartment, or house, is burning down, and rescues her from the burning building. The end. A rather dark concept for a cartoon animated short, but it really isn't as disturbing as the description might make it out to be. The full short can still be viewed today on YouTube. The Pom Pom EP. Created by the indie rock band Dreamwife, this EP was released for a short time online in 2014 before being taken down by the next year, with seemingly no known backups found online, leaving the tracks lost. This was one of the band's earliest ventures into the music scene, releasing 2 EPs including the Pom Pom EP before actually releasing their debut album titled eponymously Dreamwife in 2018. The other early EP, released in 2016, was still widely available, but their true debut remained elusive. It was said to have contained 4 tracks entitled Be With Me, Chemistry, Believe, and Surf, and was stated to have been available on Bandcamp for a short time before being taken off the site. Interest in the EP grew as the band became more famous, although they were much less well known when the original EP was released, which is why it remained lost and obscure for years, until in March of 2025, a YouTube archive channel called At Risk Media Archive uploaded the EP in its entirety, where it can be listened to today. Halo 2 E3 Beta. Halo 2, for me personally, is one of my favorite games of all time, thanks not only to it being such a great sequel to the first game, but also being one of the very first games I ever played on the original Xbox, so there's a lot of nostalgia there, and this little gem discovered this year had me hyped as a big fan of the franchise. Now, Halo 2 today is often lauded as one of the best games in the whole series, but was actually plagued by a variety of issues when it came to its development, including its notoriously short development window, as well as the fact that Bungie got very deep into development of this game, only to completely scrap it and start over, with some of the only remnants from this version being a demo which was showcased at E3 2003, a year before the game we know today would launch. This demo was quite interesting because it was very different from the final game, not just in terms of presentation, but also even included an entirely cut level from the game, which seemed to be quite similar to the levels Outskirts and Metropolis, which would appear in the final release. Of course, the game looks quite rough and is unfinished in this demo build. Different animations, textures, even the battle rifle is single fire rather than the 3-round burst, sort of like the DMR in Halo Reach. Unfortunately, however, for years this mission remained unplayable after the level was scrapped and the game was completely reworked, leaving only this archived footage from the E3 presentation as proof of its existence. That was until, through the work of the modding team DigSite, as well as 343 Studios, the mission was reworked and fully restored as a part of the Master Chief Collection, where it can now be replayed as it was originally designed, granted on a very different version of the engine compared to the early development kit, but still a huge W for Lost Media and Halo fans alike. But this was technically found last year in November of 2024. Thankfully though, there was another E3 build found from Halo 2 this year in January. Halo 2 was again shown off at E3 2004 in May, before its release in November. And during this showcase, there was a multiplayer demo that was available only at this event, until it was finally leaked online through the Internet Archive by a user named Carnival, who found it through an Xbox debug kit, although it isn't much different and is only playable on the map Zanzibar, but also, interestingly enough, allows the user to actually trigger the E3 presentation on this build using a certain button combination, which is neat. Fish Atari Prototype. We still have Atari 2600 games, a console first released back in 1977, having lost games that are being found for it in the big 2025. Allow me to introduce you to Fish. A very simple game and prototype by today's standards, but still a cool find nonetheless. The game was found on January 10th of 2025 when a user going by Dutchman2000 posted to the Atari Age forums with a download link to the game, which they said they acquired from a VAX/VMS backup tape from Atari's coin-op division. Besides that, not much is known about the game's development, despite this prototype being fully playable today. It's a fairly simple game similar to Shark Shark, in which you go through waves playing as a fish, eating other sea life, and getting power-ups while avoiding obstacles. You know, the usual affair for the time. Zoptions Focusing on Your Future. Zoptions Focusing on Your Future is an educational short film created in cooperation with the Canadian government in the 1990s to be shown at schools about a group of kids that play an arcade game called Zoptions, which illustrates various careers and job paths in their future and relays to the children the importance of education and staying in school to one day get a job and maintain a professional career. It was made in both English and French and bundled on VHS alongside some other educational videos. However, besides the fact that it was created in 1989 by Charbonneau Productions, in collaboration with Human Resources Development Canada, and the fact that it allegedly won an international award, at least it lists so, on the Termium Plus database, not much else was known. The video ended up becoming obscure and lost sometime down the line, likely after it stopped showing up in school curriculum. However, the film was found on February 25th of 2025, when a user called Oyen managed to track it down by putting in a request to the Library and Archives of Canada, which granted them access to both the French and English versions of the videos, each being about 12 minutes long, making this short film now found. Weird Herald Unreleased Songs. One band you might not have heard of, hailing from San Francisco, is the group known as Weird Harold, who played in clubs in the area in the late 60s, and were friends with other musicians at the time that would go on to be quite famous, such as the Doobie Brothers, who even later dedicated a few songs to a member of the band, who passed in 1970, named Billy Dean Andrus. Before his passing though, the band recorded their only known album back in 1968 and 1969, but went unreleased for unknown reasons, possibly due to disputes with the studio, producers, or management. Either way, the album was lost for decades, and the master tapes thought to have been destroyed, though many claim that copies of the album did still exist, and were in the hands of the surviving members of the band, including Paul Ziegler and Max Weiss. Finally, over 50 years after it was recorded, the album would be released by Spanish record label Guersen Records on February 12, 2025, given the name Just Yesterday. Finley the Fire Engine Pilot. Here we have another previously lost and now found pilot episode. Get ready because there are quite a few more. This one being from the BBC program Finley the Fire Engine, a British animated children's series which aired for 2 seasons and 78 episodes, featuring the adventures of a talking fire engine named Finley as he traverses the town of Friendlyville, which has other talking vehicles. The first episode of the series aired on September 30th, 2007, and consists of 2 segments, which each episode typically does. However, there was an unreleased pilot episode dated way back to February of 2004, which never aired, called Fast Freddy Fire Truck, a slightly altered version of Finley the Fire Engine. This lost pilot was discovered and posted to YouTube by Channel Derps in January of 2025. That original upload, it looks like, has been taken down, but it itself was archived, leaving this once lost pitch pilot found and still available on YouTube. Drawn Together Pitch Pilot. Drawn Together was a 3-season animated sitcom that aired on Comedy Central from October 2004 to November of 2007 for a total of 36 episodes. The cartoon is a parody of American reality TV shows and sitcoms, utilizing caricatures of various well-known real-life people from reality TV, as well as other cartoon characters. The show was pitched to Comedy Central in 2003 by creators Dave Jesser and Matt Silverstein. It wasn't your typical pitch pilot though, more of a proof of concept utilizing rough animation done through Flash, and also featured character designs that were quite different from the final show. The only footage that existed for a long time was a short clip from behind-the-scenes footage of the Drawn Together the Movie DVD. However, since that movie released way back in 2010, it seemed unlikely this lost pitch pilot would ever see the light of day, until this year, when one of the original creators, Matt Silverstein, uploaded the entire thing to his YouTube channel in March of 2025. Kiki How Cruiser. Airing back in the 80s, Kiki How Cruiser was a Chinese puppet show based on the works of Chinese writer Zhang Wanji. The show aired briefly for only about 16 episodes, which were only thought to have ever aired on one channel, which had no home media releases of any kind, making it quite a rare and obscure piece of media. The show follows a group of toys that seek adventure, including a model cruiser ship that the series is named after. Due to its obscurity, no episodes of the show were available online, until in 2020, the last episode, episode 16, was posted to YouTube, but that still left the rest of this relatively unknown series. But through the diligent work of the Lost Media community, specifically a member of the Lost Media Archaeology QQ team named Sinking Planet, they managed to acquire the remaining episodes and upload them to Bilibili in April of this year, making the entire series now found. Family Guy Unaired Pilot. This is probably the biggest find of this year, at least at the time of me making this volume of this series, the once lost pitch pilot for the famous American animated sitcom Family Guy. I probably don't need to introduce the show given its cultural relevance and popularity over the years, airing first in 1999 and going to this day for 23 seasons and over 400 episodes. Before the show would debut with its pilot episode, Death Has a Shadow, on January 31st, 1999. There was a pilot which was created and pitched to Fox by Seth MacFarlane and was apparently made with only a budget of around $50,000, leading Seth to animate most of the episode by himself, which is quite impressive given it's a 15-minute long episode. The only footage available could be found on a DVD special feature, but this only had a portion of the episode, although we did get a look at the character designs, which were slightly different from the real first episode of the show, mainly with Lois's hair color being changed, as well as quite a few voice actors. However, it turned out the episode was uploaded to the website of an animator named Robert Paulson, and was only discovered this year by Lost Media Wiki user Ghost Dead Girl in March of 2025. The entire pitch pilot for Family Guy has since been uploaded to YouTube, where it can still be watched today.
Remember when Dad got drunk off the communion wine at church?
And so the Lord God smoked poor Job with festering boils all over his body.
Oh God, I hate it when he tells this story.
Yet miraculously, Job was still able to keep his dignity.
The all-new Jeopardy pilot. Obviously, Jeopardy needs no introduction, being one of, if not the most popular game show ever to have aired, and still ongoing today, since 1964, with well over 9,000 episodes being filmed. However, the show briefly concluded in 1974, before coming back to the air in 1978, under a different production company and a new name, the all-new Jeopardy! Debuting on NBC in October of that year, and hosted by Art Fleming, the show only ran for less than a year, and about 100 episodes, before ending in March of 1979. Eventually though, the original series was brought back, and has since become a mainstay in terms of American game shows. But this relatively short-lived revival had an unused and unaired pilot which was filmed back in 1977, a year prior to the first episode's debut broadcast. This was a pitch pilot which was shown to CBS and was ultimately passed on, hence why it would later air on NBC. The pilot was quite a bit different in terms of format from the one that would be publicly shown a year later. It more closely resembled the original series set but had different rules. For example, the game would start with contestants having 30 seconds to gather money to start with from the board before starting the actual first round, with contestants picking from the clues. Because this pilot was unsold and never aired, it became lost media and wasn't seen for almost 50 years, until finally, in March of 2025, a guy named Adam Nedev posted the entire pilot episode to his Facebook account. DXP. Children's and Cartoon Networks are known for having quite a few short-lived and sometimes obscure blocks, which aired on their channels, sometimes late at night and in the early morning hours, when most people weren't awake to see them, and have since fallen into obscure media territory, or are simply now just foggy childhood memories. One of these such blocks was called DXP, and aired from July to November 2017 on Disney XD from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. DXP marketed itself as a gamer program, containing various game-related pieces of media, such as airings of Wreck-It Ralph, Smash Bros. And Street Fighter V tournaments, Let's Plays done by a guy named Parker Plays, and even speedruns. Most of this content ended up becoming lost or obscure over the years after they ceased airing it when the block ended. However, as time went on, the lost media community slowly started to accumulate more and more episodes that were aired, including missing ESL speedrunner episodes, Parker Plays, and more. And in February of 2025, the rest of Polaris Player Select was found, a series of clips from high-profile gaming YouTubers such as Markiplier and Jacksepticeye, making the entire block found, including everything that aired as far as we know. The Jaleel White Special. Jaleel White, famous for, of course, his portrayal of Steve Urkel in the ABC sitcom Family Matters, wanted to showcase more of his range as an actor and comedian, and so devised a one-time primetime TV special, which would end up airing on ABC in February of 1992, simply titled The Jaleel White Special. It's honestly pretty shocking that this was even lost at all, given it aired during the peak of Family Matters' popularity, which was one of the most popular sitcoms of the early 90s. Still, it was only a one-time event, and no known recordings could be located for decades. All that could be found was a short TV spot promoting the special.
Tonight, the man from Urkel, Jaleel White, stars in his own story of cinematic romance. Roll on! With Vanessa Williams' assist, Little Richard as his psychic, Nell Carter as the principal, and Urkel as himself.
However, suddenly in January of 2025, a YouTube account by the name of Pause Stop Eject Videos uploaded the entire special to YouTube, where it can still be watched today. Invincible Motion Comic.
Stand ready for my arrival, worm.
Oh boy, I've been aching to talk about this one. Even before it ended up kind of being found, being a huge fan of Invincible and all, especially with the absolute hype that came with Season 3's finale. If you know, you know. But anyways, Invincible definitely wasn't always this mainstream, less popular than Kirkman's other work, The Walking Dead, of course, which at this point hadn't even been adapted by AMC and became a household name. At this point, Invincible was only known to comic readers and was relatively niche. This is like the mid to late 2000s we're talking about right now. So when Invincible actually got a motion comic adaptation in 2008 on MTV, it sort of flew under the radar. This is before AMC would create the Walking Dead TV show in 2010, mind you. 6 episodes ended up being produced for MTV Mobile, but was also available on iTunes, anybody remember that? As well as Xbox Live and even Amazon. However, of course, at some point, the series was taken down and became lost media, obviously well before anything was in the works at Amazon in regards to the animated series. Only brief clips were available as well as a few images, until Instagram user @GeekStuffGT found all 6 of the lost episodes this year after getting on an old iPod, which takes me back to the Stone Age. Of course, this isn't exactly the best quality to find this in. I mean, it's essentially just cam footage of their iPod, but I guess it's better than nothing. I gotta say, the voice actor for Mark is pretty good. He honestly sounds pretty similar to Steven Yeun as well.
You know, you really ruined my afternoon. Well, now that's what I'm saying.
Dark Castle MSX port. Dark Castle, originally released back in 1986 for the Macintosh, is an old-school platforming puzzle title developed by Silicon Beach Software, in which you play as Prince Duncan and have to navigate different areas of a castle while avoiding traps and solving puzzles, you know, the usual affair. The game was most notoriously covered by the Angry Video Game Nerd in this review of the Sega Genesis version of the game. Another version was quietly released exclusively in Japan for the MSX computer back in 1993 and was sold only on floppy disks, and later became quite obscure and later lost media entirely. Until in March of 2025, a user named Trev Gauntlet New was able to find and purchase the game from a Japanese game store and later provided us with not only screenshots and gameplay footage, but also an archived copy which can be downloaded and played today. Shantae Advance: Risky Revolution. Developed and released in 2002 for the Game Boy Color by Way Forward, Shantae was a platformer starring the eponymous character as you traverse Sequin Land on an adventure to stop a pirate named Risky Boots, all the while unlocking new abilities such as unique dances and the ability to turn into different animals. The game was planned to have a sequel in 2003, despite the original game being commercially a flop, even though it did receive quite favorable reviews. This sequel was going to be released on the Game Boy Advance and went under a few working titles, such as Shantae 2 and simply Shantae Advance. Unfortunately, the game was cancelled after a publisher for the title could not be found, thanks to the poor sales of the original. However, quite a bit of development was completed for the game, which was going to feature even more abilities, such as flight, and even the ability to switch seamlessly between the foreground and backgrounds of the maps. and was also meant to include a 4-player co-op mode. Despite the game being cancelled, a demo from 2004 was known to exist, as co-creator of the series, Matt Bozon, played through it on Twitch back in 2014, although no copy was available for the public to play, as he wasn't able to release it due to legal concerns. Shockingly though, almost a decade later, it was revealed that the game was still being worked on in 2023, and was going to be finished and released under the publisher Limited Run Games, who specialize in indie and more low-profile physical media releases. And in this year, in 2025, the full game was released for the Game Boy Advance, as well as the Nintendo Switch. But not only was the game released 2 decades after it was first announced, but the original demo from 2004 was also recovered and uploaded to the Internet Archive, and is also available to be played. Jumper and Singing Simon. Jumper and Singing Simon, created in 1988 by Sean Johnson, was an edutainment VHS program for young kids and toddlers, also sometimes known as Jumper the Frog and Singing Simon, featuring, you guessed it, Jumper the Talking Frog and his human companion, Singing Simon. This show was quite obscure and pretty short-lived, as just a few years later, some of its ideas and concepts were recycled into a different children's show in 1990, titled Eco, You, and Simon 2, which featured the same character from Jumper and Singing Simon. The tape was so obscure that no screenshots or footage could be found of it for years, until finally this year, in 2025, fellow Lost Media YouTuber El Supersonic Q managed to track it down and upload it to his second channel, where it can still be watched today. Also, El Supersonic Q made a whole video deep diving into the search for this lost show that almost no one had heard about or thought was real until it was eventually found. Thomas and Friends Pitch Pilot. Thomas and Friends, based on the Railway series books by Wilbert Awdry, this British children's series ran from 1984 all the way until 2021 and was a huge part of people's childhoods, both abroad and at home in the UK. The series was initially conceived in 1979 by Britt Alcroft, testing and developing a low-budget pitch pilot using live-action model animation, which would be finally shown to networks in April of 1983. This pilot was never actually released, due to the series getting a different first episode in 1984 on the ITV network. This was known as Thomas and Gordon in the UK, or Thomas Gets Tricked in the US, rather than Down the Mine, which was the pitch pilot episode, and was later created into the 26th broadcast episode, at least in the UK. The pitch pilot version was, however, slightly different, including many of the models which were said to be more simplistic in design and had quite a few faults, such as some of the eyes actually leaking smoke and moving during some of the shots, something that was fixed in the debut broadcast episode. There was also quite a bit of concept art, as well as images of the actual models used themselves. There are a few images from the production, including one which was found by Lost Media YouTuber Sewer Reviewer, who obtained it from an anonymous source. And in May of 2025, to celebrate the 80th anniversary of this franchise, a digitized and recreated version of the original pilot was uploaded officially to the Thomas and Friends YouTube channel. Super Mario Big Star Secret. Can't believe I'm saying this, but yes, Super Mario Big Star Secret was finally found. Well, not fully, but sort of, partially found anyway, but still worth talking about. If you haven't heard of this before, it's a rather huge search that's been going on for quite some time in the Lost Media community, in regards to an infamous Screamer video uploaded to YouTube back in August of 2007, known as Super Mario 64 Big Star Secret, that would later be deleted and never seen again. It became quite a popular topic in the community, thanks to the efforts of a dedicated subgroup and a guy named Marvel, who made a documentary on the hunt for this lost Mario jump scare video. The video itself was described as being a 5-minute long Windows Movie Maker production, with scrolling text informing the viewer on a fake way to unlock Luigi in the game, following a series of convoluted steps inside of the castle, before abruptly cutting to the infamous zombie jump scare that was used in many a Screamer video back in the day, but most famously this commercial. I'm sure you probably recognize this just from the background alone. The community was able to get in contact with the original uploader, who recalled certain elements of the video, but sadly did not have it in their possession. The only known footage of the video at this time was a reaction video called Little Brother Getting Scared Late Reaction, which showed low resolution footage of the video, but only partially. Another breakthrough was made in 2024 thanks to another reaction video being found, this time which showed about 40 seconds of Big Star's secret, albeit also in poor quality. However, in a shocking twist of events, in May of 2025, footage of the first 47 seconds of the video were found on a Lost Media Wiki user's temp folder in their hard drive, which somehow backed up thousands upon thousands of old YouTube videos on a very old Windows XP PC, this being one of them. However, that still left over 4 minutes of the video still lost, and the jump scare itself remains elusive, but at least gives hope that one day this whole thing could eventually be found, especially with how seemingly dedicated people are to this specific case. Tip-off NES port. Okay, so I'm kind of running out of things to talk about a little bit. So here we have a now found but originally lost, cancelled build of an Amiga game for the NES. It was originally released in 1991 for the Amiga, Atari ST, and Game Boy by Onco Software, and was a 16-bit basketball title. The game overall is pretty standard, but I do kind of find it weird that they wanted to release this game on the NES in 8-bit well after the release of the SNES, Genesis, and Amiga, so it's likely this port to the NES was going to be based on the game for the Game Boy, but was never actually finished and never got past early development, and even still, it was found in April of 2025. A floppy disk with the source code and an early build was located and released by the gaming website Games That Weren't on April 21st, 2025. Cyber Soldier Shiraku. One of the last pieces of media we're going to talk about in this volume, a Japanese exclusive CDI game from 1993. The game was a point-and-click adventure title taking place in the far future, focusing on the Galactic Federation and cyber soldiers that were waking up to their human consciousness. Because of the complete failure that was the CDI, this game did not sell well, and was region-locked to Japan, making it not only obscure, but also rare and hard to come by, just a few years after it was released. It wasn't until April of 2025 that Lost Media Wiki user, Shiroe NL, actually found a copy of the game and dumped it on the Internet Archive, where it is finally now playable. The game is also mostly cutscenes and QuickTime events, so a walkthrough can also be watched on YouTube. Jimmy Two Shoes Test Pilot. Created by Sean Scott and Edward Kay, and running from 2009 to 2011 for 2 seasons and 52 episodes, the series followed the character of Jimmy, a young boy living in the town of Miseryville, who goes about his life happily, while everyone else around him is miserable. Well, before the show aired, a 6-minute pitch pilot was created in 2006, which was much different from the final product, as the show was originally intended for much more mature audiences, at least conceptually, with the series being set in hell, which now it makes a lot more sense why everyone else is miserable and Jimmy is sort of happy-go-lucky. With the character of Heloise also originally being a serial killer and Heinous the Devil literally being Lucifer. The original plot of the pilot was rumored to feature Jimmy helping an old lady cross the street and dying in the process, and is sent to hell for being mistaken for a thief as he's hit by a car while picking up the old lady's wallet. However, the concept of hell and character designs were all cut down and toned down, with the concepts being reworked into a more children-friendly show before it ended up being greenlit. In May of 2025, this test pilot animation was uploaded in full by one of the co-creators, Edward K., to his personal YouTube channel. The episode is a lot more chill than you might expect, and not all that creepy and different from the actual show. But what is strange is how the pilot was actually acquired, as it wasn't just posted by the co-creator who had it all this time. According to him, in the description of this video, he claims, quote, "I still don't know who sent it to me. A DVD arrived literally on my doorstep with no note or address. Someone obviously just felt I should have it. They were probably afraid that there would be legal liabilities for sharing it, since everyone who had a copy had to sign a legal document saying they would not distribute it, hence the anonymity. I, however, never had to sign any such document, since I was never officially given one, so here it is." A pretty odd way for a piece of lost media to be found, and sounds more akin to something that would happen in a creepypasta, but I guess we'll take it. Ink, paint, scratch. One of the more famous works known today, especially by lost media enthusiasts, which remains elusive, is the famous unauthorized Disney short from 1964, known as Uncle Walt, containing numerous racial stereotypes, nudity of Disney characters, as well as other strange and creepy scenes. It was created by animator and artist Robert Swarth, who along with Uncle Walt, has a lot of other known short films which remain lost today, including most of his early work. One of these lost animated short films was Ink, Paint, Scratch from 1979, which was an educational piece on how to create animated films without using a camera, and featured different techniques for drawing onto the film itself, rather than the typical method of photographing individual frames for animation. The 10-minute short was uploaded to YouTube on May 22nd, 2025 by AV Geeks 16mm Films. AT&T Dolphin Tales soundtrack. Dolphin Tales was a popular event and show that took place between the years of 2011 to 2016 at the Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta. Sponsored by phone company AT&T, it featured a live performance by both actors, as well as the star of the show, the coordinated dolphins. The show was about a sailor named Star Spinner who would travel around the world on his ship, learning stories from dolphins, and showing them in the stars through constellations, and along with the help of the audience as well as his dolphin companions, he's able to defeat a sea monster that sinks his boat. It also had an exclusive soundtrack which accompanied the show, an orchestral score which was released as the Dolphin Tales soundtrack, composed by Timothy Williams. However, after the show was cancelled and replaced with a different dolphin show, the soundtrack faded into obscurity and became lost media. It wouldn't be until May of 2025 that the entire soundtrack would finally be recovered fully, being uploaded to the Internet Archive after it was sent by the composer himself. 3 Idiots. Not to be confused with the 3 Idiots movie from 2009, or the series of videos by Dotto Doya, Rhymestyle, and Syriax, this was a Nintendo original series created as part of an on-demand video service for the 3DS from 2012 to 2014 over the course of 6 episodes. The series was created by Kate Duffy and starred the characters of Burke and Lola Edwardson as they travel around the city of Somerville. When Nintendo Video was eventually discontinued, all the episodes of the show were lost, as the series was not made available anywhere else. Only behind-the-scenes photos and videos existed, and people interested had to simply hold out hope that someone had downloaded this obscure series, which actually seems to have been the case, as many years later, on June 1st of 2025, the entire 6-episode series was uploaded to the Internet Archive. Making Fiends, the Puppy. Beginning as a web cartoon in 2003, this series, created by Amy Winfrey, would later be picked up by Nickelodeon to become a show featured on their streaming service, Turbo Nick. The show was about a girl named Charlotte who moves into a town called Clamberg, a town inhabited by monsters known as fiends, created by a different girl called Vendetta. The series ran for a total of 2 seasons and 30 episodes, which would also be later distributed on iTunes as well. But we aren't here for the actual series. The lost media in this case were the promotional shorts created for the show, 6 of them made for Turbo Nick. All 6 would be lost, but eventually all but the first one, known as The Puppy, were found in their entirety and uploaded to the Internet Archive. But finally, this year, the last 23-second promo was finally ripped and uploaded online in June of 2025. Duke Nukem D-Day. Duke Nukem D-Day, also known as Duke Nukem Man of Valor, was a planned and later cancelled title for the PS2, which started development in 1999 by N-Space, and interestingly enough, was going to be published by Rockstar Games. The game was a third-person shooter taking Duke through World War II, time-traveling, fighting against Nazis as well as aliens along the way, before the game was sadly cancelled in 2003 for unknown reasons. This year though, on June 6, 2025, a prototype build of the cancelled game dated June 4, 2001 was leaked online, showing a game that was almost complete, with 12 playable levels, although there are no cutscenes or voice acting of any kind. The description accompanying the game, uploaded to archive.org, even says that it may have been around 90% complete, although this doesn't really seem to hold up when you consider the game would be in development for at least 2 more years after this point, as the title was formally cancelled in 2003. If this is true though, this may suggest that an even more finished, later build of the game exists out there somewhere. Still, this version is playable today on emulators such as PCSX2. Me and My Friends. Probably the biggest lost media find of the year, this is the infamous live-action pilot of The Backyardigans, an animated Nickelodeon children's series about a group of animals that imagine themselves going on adventures in the comfort of their own backyard. This original pilot, though, was very different, as the show was not animated and rather featured actors wearing costumes portraying the characters, which was recorded back in late 1998 and ended up being rejected by Nickelodeon, which led to the series being reworked into an animated series with a CGI pilot in 2002, which would lead to the series being greenlit. Before the episode was eventually discovered, this pilot episode was one of the most sought after and searched for pieces of lost media in the history of the internet. Countless videos, discords, search teams, everything went into finding this lost pilot, and it did eventually pay off many years later. At this point, I would say the search itself is such a storied piece of lost media history that it's more interesting than the actual episode itself. Both LSSQ and Sewer Reviewer have great videos diving into the history behind this search. I'm definitely no expert on the topic, and can't say I was as invested in the effort as they were. Anyways, for years, the only clip we had was a short snippet from the intro, only about 3 seconds of footage which was released, along with a ton of behind-the-scenes photos of the set, the cast, crew, concept art, and so on. New photos would even be found and sort of drip-fed to the community over the years, further fueling search efforts and giving hope that the actual pilot would one day be uncovered, which is exactly what happened. On June 27, 2025, an anonymous source uploaded the episode to 4chan, seemingly honoring the memory of Janice Burgess, the original creator of The Backyardigans and Me and My Friends, who passed away on March 2nd, 2024. Phineas and Ferb, Delivery of Destiny Simon Pegg version. I probably don't need to introduce Phineas and Ferb. It's a classic animated series which aired on Disney Channel and Disney XD from 2007 to 2015 for 150 episodes and 5 seasons. In the season 4 episode, Night of the Living Pharmacists, both Simon Pegg and Nick Frost make cameos, appearing as their characters from the zombie parody film Shaun of the Dead. However, this wasn't Simon's only cameo in the series, just the most easily recognized one. He also appeared in the UK version of a Season 3 episode called Delivery of Destiny, which aired in 2013. It originally premiered in 2012 on Disney Channel in the US, with Christian Slater voicing the character of Paul the Delivery Guy. Simon Pegg had tweeted about the show that year, being a fan of it, and was asked to voice the character for the UK version, which he agreed to. While clips of this cameo could be easily found online, the entire episode itself became lost after Disney Channel and Disney XD in the UK were shut down, with only the American dub of the episode being available on most streaming services. In June of 2025, the full UK episode would be uploaded to the Internet Archive by user Charter Schoolgirl.
Alright, Dad. Talk to you later. Bye.
Dora the Explorer pitch pilot. Yet another lost and now found pitch pilot. We have the Dora the Explorer demo episode made to pitch the series to Nickelodeon in the late 90s. This was different from the first episode that aired on TV, called The Big Red Chicken, which debuted in August of 2000. The original pilot was said to have a similar plot to episode 4, Beaches, but most notably featured a much different design of Boots the Monkey. Over the years, a few clips and screen caps surfaced, but the episode remained elusive, until June 23rd of 2025, when the episode was uploaded in its entirety to the Funline Animation YouTube channel and has since been mirrored and archived on other sites. Wayside School. The Wayside School series, written by Louis Sachar, starting in the late 70s, is a series of short children's books taking place on the 30th story of a school located in a skyscraper. The series became quite popular, receiving many books and even multiple attempts at adaptation, including an animated series and even a live-action ABC special in 1987, which is where this piece of lost media comes from. It aired in 1987 on the network before falling into obscurity and not being seen again until many years later. It was known to focus on a kid named Andy, and was said to have a mix of both live action and puppet segments, for a total of a 23-minute runtime, airing sometime in the fall of that year. A few screenshots, as well as a 4-minute clip uploaded to YouTube, were all that remained from this lost special, until in June of 2025, when a YouTuber named Plato would upload the entire special to their YouTube channel, after having received a copy of it from the actor PJ Auckland, who portrayed the main character of Andy way back then. The Wacky World of Tex Avery. The Wacky World of Tex Avery, not to be confused with the Tex Avery Show, this was a French and American production created in honor of the animator and artist Tex Avery, although the series wasn't received very well and was sort of obscure after its initial airings, having only 1 season and 65 episodes, which aired in both France and the US. When the show was later added to streaming services such as Tubi TV, only 52 of the 65 episodes were made available, leaving 13 of the episodes lost. That was until this year, when starting in February of 2025, a TV channel in the US called MeTV Toons began airing reruns of The Wacky World of Tex Avery, eventually arriving at the 13 lost episodes in May, finishing the full 65 episode run, and making the entire series now found. The Shining Overlook Hotel Image. This one was a mystery I discussed in one of the Reddit rabbit hole episodes. Since then, it has been solved. Found within the Overlook Hotel towards the end of the iconic horror film from 1980, The Shining, is a photograph said to be of a ball inside the hotel, dated 1921, featuring Jack Nicholson's character Jack Torrance, front and center of the picture. However, what led to intrigue wasn't necessarily what it meant for the story, or its ominous presence towards the end of the film, but rather where this picture actually came from, as Jack Nicholson had been superimposed into a different photo, one which had been lost to time since the creation of the movie. The only reference to the image could be found in a 1985 book called the complete airbrush and photo retouching manual, which included a fragment of the original photo, which also left behind the mystery of who this person was that had been replaced by Jack Nicholson, and where the photo even originated from in the first place. The original image was eventually tracked down in April of 2025 by retired teacher Alasdair Spark and investigative journalist Arik Tolar after finding the licensed photo through one of director Stanley Kubrick's companies. The original image was of a Valentine's Day dance located at the Empress Ballroom in the Royal Palace Hotel, London, 1921. The man in the center of the photograph is speculated to be John Goldman, aka Santos Cassini, a dancer from London. Nigel Mansell's World Championship. Here we have yet another game recovered by gaming website Games That Weren't. The title was developed by Gremlin for the Commodore 64 in 1993. The game was based on the British Formula 1 driver of the same name, who won the championship in 1992. While versions for the ZX Spectrum and Amstrad CPC would see a release, the Commodore version of the game never came out. In 2025, Games That Weren't were able to get in contact with one of the original developers, and were able to help in the recovery of a build dated March 29, 1993, making this C64 prototype of the game now playable today. Ride to Hell Route 666. Because I'm weird, this might actually be my favorite thing so far that's been found this year, at least in this volume of the list. I love me some obscure spin-off games, but not only that, an obscure spin-off game of an already obscure and notoriously glitchy and bad game from the 360 generation. Sign me up. So if you've never heard of Ride to Hell Retribution, it's an infamous third-person game from 2013 developed by Eutechnyx, combining aspects of racing, shooting, and beat-em-up as you play as a biker named Jake Conway. The game is now recognized as one of the worst of all time, being a buggy mess that changed so much during development that what was left barely functioned, not to mention the poor controls, repetitive gameplay, bad voice acting, and generally unfinished feel of the game. Had it not been so bad and just say mediocre, it might have just been a forgotten Xbox 360 relic, but today it is pretty well known just for how dysfunctional it is. Now, a spin-off / sequel of this game, how could this have even been possibly greenlit? Well, apparently there were 2 additional games planned as a part of this new franchise. One was a mobile beat-em-up game called Ride to Hell Beatdown, and the other was the unreleased Route 666 from Black Forest Games. Planned for a release on Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation, and Steam, as players would take on a strategic role, managing a biker gang and riding along highways, taking out rival gangs, even planning out positions and formations on the highway, like a playbook from an NFL game, all the while building up your biker club and making your way along Route 66. The game was never actually released or finished. However, in 2025, an Xbox 360 build of the game, dated April 10, 2013, leaked online, including a fully playable tutorial mission and intro cutscene. SpongeBob SquarePants 4D. Making its debut at various theme parks, including Paramount's Kings Island and Flamingo Land Resort, this was a motion simulator ride, also known as SpongeBob 3D and SpongeBob SquarePants The Ride. The audience would wait in lines watching a pre-show video on TV screens to keep people from being too bored as they waited to enter the theater for the main show, which was an exclusive 5-minute SpongeBob short, with most of the main cast returning, as well as SpongeBob teaching the crowd how to make Krabby Patties. The ride utilized motion seats and 3D glasses for the visual effects to further give a feeling of being in the scene itself. Despite some of the CGI looking, well, a little bit dated by today's standards, kinda reminds me of those SpongeBob PS2 games, it was still quite well received for the SpongeBob short itself, as well as the immersive effects on display, such as the audience being sprayed with water when bubbles were blown on screen. You even get to ride with SpongeBob on his bubble bicycle as he travels down to rock bottom in search of a lost pickle. Just looking at this though, I know I would 100% get motion sick on this ride. I went on the Simpsons one back at Universal Studios and yeah, I almost threw up, but this might just be a me thing. I can barely play regular VR games as is. Today though, this short is most well known for the memes it spawned, notably,
By the way, you're doing... By the way, you're doing great for your first day.
It's not the actual ride video that was lost media, however. It was readily available, in fact, all these years. With it being a fairly popular attraction, it was uploaded to YouTube in 2016 and has since gotten over 44 million views. Quite impressive given that a lot of the charm is lost without the 3D effects. It was actually the far less interesting pre-show video which became lost, as it was just kind of something on the TVs while you waited in line, and not really something most people even paid much attention to. It featured SpongeBob himself waiting in line while talking about various events that happened in the show, so that they could of course replay classic scenes in the meantime. For a long while, only incomplete clips and pictures of the pre-show video were available online, until in July of 2025, the Lost Media Busters made a post about the video on Twitter, aka X, and received a reply from a user called greenthing_CTR, who sent the video over after having downloaded it from an old YouTube upload, which got taken down. Although it's admittedly in poor quality, the complete pre-show video can be watched on the Lost Media Busters YouTube channel. To Tell the Truth DVD game. To Tell the Truth was a long-running American game show involving a series of contestants pretending to have a certain occupation while one of them was actually telling the truth, with the panelists having to determine who was the one lying and who was actually telling the truth. The show had multiple runs on many different networks over the years, starting in 1956 and finally ending its latest incarnation in 2022. Of course, with it being such a huge property and money-making machine, it couldn't just be a game show and had other business ventures as well, including board games and even a planned DVD game based on the panel show created in 2005. This was a popular trend at the time, as the company that created it, Imagination Entertainment, also made DVD games based on Let's Make a Deal, Family Feud, Deal or No Deal, and many others. However, it appears that the To Tell the Truth game was never released, as there is very little information to be found on it online, at least initially. In 2017, a listing for the game was found on Amazon Canada, which showed off the cover art, although the DVD itself was listed as out of stock. But thankfully, this year in 2025, a user named Race Olympics found a copy in June and uploaded the whole thing to the Internet Archive. Monty's Magic Words. Wile E. Kazam is a 3D animated children's series created by Adam Peltzman, which aired on Nick Jr. for 2 seasons and 52 episodes, taking place in a fairy tale setting where a troll named Wally travels the land with his pet dragon Norville and uses a magic wand to change the world around him. The series premiered in February of 2014, but initially started as 2 5-minute shorts featuring the same characters of Norville and Wally, though in this version he was known as Monty, as he and his companion chased after the magic wand. The other short was called The Legend of the Stick and followed the last one, showing them finally catching the magic stick, and also had the title card of Monty's Magic Words. This short was lost after it was deleted from Vimeo, and only short clips could be found, until on June 27th of 2025, the original Legend of the Stick short was uploaded to the Internet Archive by user Team Sonic 2011. Drop Zone US Prototype. Drop Zone, created in 1984, was an early side-scrolling shooter developed by Archer McLean for the Atari 8-bit computers, and was later released on various different consoles, such as the NES, Game Boy Color, and Game Gear. The NES port, however, was never released in the States and was only made available in Europe. However, in July of 2025, an unreleased US prototype was found and uploaded to Hidden Palace, a website and gaming community dedicated to video game media preservation, including prototype and unreleased versions. Picasso Print Retrospective Exhibition. This one is quite the bizarre case, beginning with a Japanese commercial for Donto, a name brand of adhesive body warmers created by the company Kincho. The commercial itself isn't anything too notable. I don't speak any Japanese myself, but to me it just seems like it shows some guys out in the cold freezing, before of course advertising their body warmers. But then randomly, you're greeted with this. Now, this isn't actually a part of the commercial, but was a strange addition to the clip uploaded to YouTube in October of 2011, and immediately not only terrified viewers, but got them curious as to what this face was, beginning an internet search for the strange clip. Speculation was rampant as to what they had witnessed, but very quickly, people realized that the face of the man actually belonged to famous Spanish painter Pablo Picasso, specifically taken from this 1957 photograph. But why? There were many theories as to what the footage was, but nothing could be confirmed. All we knew for certain was that it came from another compilation of commercials, which was posted to Nico Nico way back in 2008, that had been clipped by the person that posted it to YouTube. Finally, we would get our answer on July 7th, 2025, when a YouTube user named Kumamon uploaded the Picasso commercial, which likely played immediately after the Donto ad, with it being a promo for the Picasso Print Retrospective Exhibition, which took place at a shopping mall in Shibuya, Japan, from December 1983 to January 1984. Even still, the full ad is quite creepy. Animaniacs Hollywood Hypnotics. Based on the Animaniacs series, this game was a 2D platformer developed for the Game Boy Advance by Full Fat Games, and was slated for a 2003 release. The game was a combination of platformer and point-and-click puzzle title, with you having to traverse the maps and also collect items that you would use to solve puzzles, with the levels typically being themed around different film sets and featuring several characters from the series. The publisher of the would-be title would go insolvent, however, in 2003 before the game could be finished and released, alongside another Animaniacs title called Hollywood Hijinks, which later would actually be released under the name of The Great Edgar Hunt by a different publisher. But that still left Hollywood Hypnotics lost. No builds of the game could be found online. That was until June of 2025, when the title was made available on the Hidden Palace website. Peg plus Cat Pilot. Airing on PBS Kids from 2013 to 2018 for 63 episodes, this children's educational series shows the young audience how to solve different problems through the eyes of the main character Peg and her talking cat. The series was based on the children's book The Chicken Problem, published in 2012. However, even before this book was made available, a pilot was created back in 2011 and posted on the PBS Kids website with the same story as The Chicken Problem. A full animated series ended up being greenlit thanks to positive reception and feedback, but at some point, the pitched pilot was removed from the website, making it lost media, as no archives were known to exist. Some storyboards, as well as a short clip from an animation reel, were the only known pieces of footage available from the pilot, until on July 24th, 2025, a Vimeo account of one of the series' producers was located, which had the full episode uploaded a year prior. Eddie Retractor Head. Eddie Retractor Head is a relatively obscure Nickelodeon UK animated series which aired in 2008 for a total of 10 shorts, following the life of Eddie, a piece of alien mucus that fell from space, bounced off a tractor, and merged with a pie. Congrats to this show because I don't think I've ever heard a stranger origin of a character before in my life. He lives his life inside of a pie house in Area 52 alongside his pal, an orange blob named Blam Blob, as they encounter many other strange characters and creatures and go on various adventures. Pretty weird synopsis, all things considered. Like I said, the series was kind of obscure and only had 10 1-minute long shorts, and for a long time, only 3 of these were available, those being Trailer, Space Day, and Exploditis. 3 more shorts were posted to series editor Tracy Cleland's Vimeo account in 2019, and in 2022, another episode titled Olympics was found and posted to YouTube. But on July 31st, 2025, the entire series was uploaded to the Internet Archive by Jordan Wright, obtained from a CD reel in possession of the series director, Gene Flynn. Freesia. Okay, so I may have included this in the list just to put that clip, but regardless, I will still talk about it. So this actually has nothing to do with Dragon Ball, but it is sort of anime related, being a Vocaloid song, which, if you don't know, Vocaloid is a voice synthesizer software used by various artists to make songs using pieces of snippets from vocals to generate what are known as voice banks that can be used to create lyrics sung with the particular voice in question. And keep in mind, this software was created well before the likes of AI songs like Heart on My Sleeve. It is also interesting because it works the same way piano synthesizers do, except with vocals. The software was created by Yamaha in 2004 and has since gone on to become sort of an entire music genre in itself, developing into its own niche subculture, usually associated with anime, and especially the character of Hatsune Miku, who started as a Vocaloid voice bank developed by Krypton Future Media. The software and community behind it spawned many famous songs and artists over the many years, and even decades at this point that it's been around, and one of these so-called producers is Dr. Willy, also known as X-Dr. Willy, who created a number of songs between the years of 2008 to 2010, before abruptly deleting his entire catalog, including his final farewell track, titled Freesia. This song was the most highly sought after, due to it being quite nostalgic for a lot of people, and because it was his graduation song, as it was called, created before he retired as a producer. It was posted to Nico Nico Doga and Piapro before it was taken down sometime later. It wouldn't be until over 10 years later that a 30-second snippet of the song would be discovered in August of 2023 on a Vocaloid song ranking list. But in July of 2025, he would finally make his return, even creating and posting remakes of some of his old tracks, including Freesia, although this one used a slightly different vocal bank from the one used in the original. After finding out about the huge community of people that look into lost Vocaloid songs known as Vocal Lost, he decided to re-upload some of his missing tracks, which of course included this one. The Muppets Present Pitch Video. The Muppets Present, also known from additional sources as the all-new Muppet Show, was a planned sequel series to The Muppets before its eventual film reboot in 2011. It was slated for a release on the Fox network in 2001 and a global release the following year. Reports differ on how faithful the show would be to the original Muppets TV series, but was said to include, of course, the original recognizable characters alongside some new ones. However, possibly due to the flop of The Muppets Tonight, which only aired for 2 seasons and 22 episodes from 1996 to 1998, The Muppets Present was also canned. It seems as though no actual episodes were produced for the series before it was cancelled, except for a pitch pilot presentation, which due to the show falling through, was not available. That was until August 9th, 2025, that a YouTube user known as A Bagel uploaded the entire pitch pilot from the year 2000. Handy Manny Nelvana Pilot. Handy Manny is a CGI children's animated series about the titular Manny and his talking tools as he goes around town helping people fix stuff. It was a classic show for young kids which aired on Playhouse Disney and eventually Disney Junior from 2006 to 2013 for 113 episodes over the course of 3 seasons. Not many probably know this, but there were actually 2 different pitch pilots created for the series, one of which is still lost today, that being the one created by DKP Studios in 2005, which was an 11-minute pilot that also used computer-generated animation, but was ultimately passed on in favor of Nelvana's take. A few pieces of concept art from the DKP pilot, as well as a few short clips, are all that remains of that first pilot. However, the Nelvana pilot, much more similar to the actual show that would be created, was found this year, on August 7th, 2025, by Sistik and Nobian, who acquired it from a crew member's disc. This was also an 11-minute pilot created in 2004, using the same plot as Season 1, Episode 3, Julietta's Monster. Exploring Frogs. A great game for all my frog enthusiasts out there. This is a very obscure educational CD-ROM that is so unknown the official release date isn't actually known, although it's thought to have been released sometime in the early 2010s. This box art of the game kinda says all you need to know. Frogs, a great interactive resource that helps children to learn about these amazing amphibians. Explores fascinating frog facts, frog anatomy, frog evolution, and frog species. It apparently also shipped with 4 clear frog models as well, with the game and toys being sold by a company called Tedco Toys, although their website has since been abandoned. The developers, COG Ltd and Interactive for All, didn't have much additional info on the product either. In fact, the only reason a search for this thing even began was a person on the Lost Media Wiki Discord server named Wembley telling of their experience with this obscure lost game in November of 2023, saying, quote, "I played this early 2000s computer game as a kid, but have never been able to locate any media from the actual gameplay, despite knowing the name. My disc is damaged beyond use, unfortunately, but I have this photo of the disc. It's called Exploring Frogs." They also provided the image of the title, which helped people track down the little information that could be found on the game, including some old listings on Amazon. In late July of 2025, Lost Media Wiki user TrovGCM managed to get a copy from a Walmart in Canada and was able to archive all contents of the game online, with Wembley confirming this was the game they remembered, making this random frog educational game now a piece of found media. Corpse Party New Chapter. Have you ever heard of the anime survival horror game Corpse Party released in 2008? Well, I'm not sure about you, but I had no idea that this game was actually a reboot of an original title created way back in 1996. It was created using the first version of the popular game-making software RPG Maker, known as Dante 98 in Japan. Many elements from this title were used in the creation of the PC reboot from 2008, including many of the characters, although several things were changed. However, a more faithful remake of the original was created for mobile devices, released in chapter installments throughout 2006 and 2007 on Famitsu's free game service, only compatible with specific Japanese devices, hence why this game and its chapters became rare and hard to come by. The title wasn't actually finished either, as only 4 of the 5 chapters were ever released before the project was cancelled in favor of the 2008 reboot titled Corpse Party Blood Covered, which is the most recognizable version today. After it was discontinued from the service, this remake, Corpse Party New Chapter, became another lost media relic, until in August of 2025, a user on the K-Tai Wiki Discord server uploaded all 4 chapters of the now defunct game, as well as many other Japanese mobile games from the time thought to have been lost as well. To Tell the Truth Unaired Pilot. And we're talking about To Tell the Truth again. I already sort of went over this American game show in the last part, but basically, it's a show where people have to try and guess which of the 3 contestants is lying about their strange job or occupation. It's a pretty basic but successful game show format, usually with celebrities being the ones doing the guessing during the show, with the program being created by Mark Goodson and Bill Todman, having many hosts over the years during its on and off runs for like 6 decades at this point. One of these reboots would occur in 2000 and run for well over 200 episodes before ending in March of 2002. An unaired pilot for this remake was recorded originally in 1999. It was only confirmed to exist when people present for the taping of the episode began to discuss it online, naming the celebrities that were present. Some images were also found from the set, as well as tickets labeling a recording date of December 12, 1999. People wouldn't have to speculate much longer on the episode though, as on August 29, 2025, the full pilot episode was uploaded to the Game Show Vault YouTube channel. The Aquabats Aqua Battle. The Aquabats Super Show is a relatively obscure but pretty well received musical action TV series which aired for 2 seasons and 22 episodes from March 2012 to January 2014 on the Hub network before its eventual cancellation, although it did later have a resurgence on YouTube in September of 2019. It was based on the American rock band of the same name, the Aquabats, and follows their day-to-day adventures moonlighting as superheroes, defending the world against the villains, with a mix of live action and cartoon animation. Created to promote the show and added to the Hub's website was a flash game called The Aquabats Aqua Battle in 2012, which was an arcade-inspired beat-em-up featuring 3 distinct stages. Once the series was cancelled and the Hub network was taken over and turned into Discovery Family in October of 2014, the Hub website was shut down, rendering the Flash game now lost as well. A partial version of the game was found and uploaded to Flashpoint, which contained one of the game's 3 levels. Not long after, a full playthrough of the game was uploaded to YouTube, and on August 29th, 2025, the remaining levels were uploaded to Flashpoint Archive, making the game finally fully playable and found. At Your Own Risk. Tyler, the creator, has been in the game for a while, even before his debut studio album, Bastard, released in 2009. He went by the name of Ace the Creator, making and posting albums on MySpace. One of these was titled At Your Own Risk, released in 2008. Most of the tracks are simply instrumentals with fake features, such as Pharrell Williams, MF Doom, Jay-Z, etc., although a lot of the material from this album would later be repurposed for other songs or beats later down the line. From the known track list, all of the songs are fully found except for 1201, Sorry V1, and Speakerbox, which are only partially available. The Incredibles 2 Cast Apology Audio. One of the more famous Pixar films, for good reason, is 2004's family superhero movie, The Incredibles, which has since garnered almost universal critical and commercial acclaim following its release. No doubt a sequel wouldn't be far off, right? Well, it wouldn't be until 2018 that The Incredibles 2 would be finally finished and released theatrically, to immense box office success and strong approval ratings from critics. That all being said, it did take a long time for the film to be made, so interestingly enough, in some early theatrical screenings of the movie, An apology from the cast members was played before the film started. This would be left out of later screenings and home media releases, meaning it was now lost media, despite being something seen presumably by millions not that long ago. On July 7th, 2025, a YouTube user named Angie Dolls uploaded an audio-only version of the cast apology. Unfortunately, we still don't have the footage, but at least we have this.
Making an animated movie isn't easy. It takes a lot of hard work.
Painstaking attention to detail.
Everyone's ready?
Listen, we get it. We know it's been a little while.
Wonderful. 14 years. Give it a long time. We get it.
Everybody quiet, please.
But seriously, do you know how tough it is to make one of these?
People have to think up the story
Wait a
and
minute, drawing
It may be painted. Go back to the story.
throwing again.
on paper, not even the computer yet,
We
okay?
know it's been a long time. Thank you for being amazing.
And now, without further ado,
Please enjoy.
Incredible singer.
just listen. It's all gonna be worth it.
Marty Workshop Reading. Marty 1955 is one of the more recognizable films of its era, receiving many awards and widespread critical acclaim, following the life of a man named Marty Paletti, a young butcher who meets a teacher named Clara at a ballroom and must choose between pursuing his love interest and the approval of his family. Before this film, however, there was a 51-minute teleplay created in 1953, which the movie would later be based on. It had a much later adaptation in the early 2000s in the form of a musical. It unfortunately never made it to Broadway and was sort of obscure, even though it had quite a star-studded cast for the time. It starred John C. Reilly as Marty and Anne Torsiglieri as Clara. For a while, information about the musical was hard to come by, and only a few production images were available online. However, it was learned this year that a tape recording on VHS did exist in the hands of New York Public Library's Theater on Film and Tape Archive, though this recording has not been made publicly available. On August 25th, 2025 though, a person named Rami Robinson found an audio recording of a workshop reading dated August 1st, 2000, and uploaded it to the Internet Archive, as well as a full audio recording of the musical, which was recorded on November 3rd, 2002. Video footage of any of these performances still remains elusive today. Bones Skeleton Crew Lost Episodes. This is another piece of partially found media, in fact actually only 3 short episodes, but I still thought it was worth mentioning if I'm trying to showcase as many pieces of lost media that were found this year as I can. Anyways, Bones is a very popular police drama series focusing on forensics, which premiered in 2005 and ran for a staggering 246 episodes over 12 seasons until March of 2017. As with any successful television series these days, there were of course plans for spin-offs, one of them being another police procedural which ran for 1 season called The Finder. The other was called Bones Skeleton Crew and was a 26-episode web series focusing on 3 new characters trying to solve a mystery behind an incomplete animal skeleton and a threatening message in the basement of a DC Museum forensics lab. It first aired on October 6, 2006 as part of an obscure and now non-existent subscription service called Sprint TV, although the episodes were later released on the Bones website before they too were later taken down. Short plot synopses and titles exist for each episode of the series, but only 3 of the episodes have ever been found and archived, which were located this year, those being Episode 13, Dinner Time, Episode 15, Skullduggery, and Episode 16, The Meat Locker. Get in your box PSA. This now solved mystery comes from r/tip of my tongue, where a user going by Ral315 inquires about a strange internet PSA from the early 2000s about gambling. What's really crazy to me is how old this post is. being made 12 years ago and just now being found this year. The user described the video as such, quote, "This was a public service announcement about internet gambling. It might have aired across multiple states. I know that in Michigan, it was sponsored by the Michigan Department of Community Health. I've scoured the internet and found many people asking about this PSA, but no video. It aired in the late 90s or early 2000s and had a family who was homeless because their son had gambled tens of thousands online. They're sitting in what looks a lot like a dump, with cardboard boxes strewn about everywhere. Rough transcript. We lost our home, our car, our savings, all because our son gambled on the internet. I told you I was sorry. Go to your box." The video was a running joke among my family and I'd love to see it again if anyone can find the video. I'll give 3 months Reddit gold for it. Of course, there were theories and people who commented saying that they remember seeing the same commercial as kids as well, but as early as 3 years ago, the OP commented that they still hadn't found it yet, saying they even emailed the Michigan Department of Community Health and the Michigan Association of Broadcasters to no response. However, on April 5th, 2025, a YouTube user named King of Memes found the PSA in an old YouTube upload of a 2001 NFL game and uploaded it to YouTube, with Ral315 editing his original post and confirming this was the PSA in question.
I lost my home, my wife, my kids, to drugs.
We lost our home, our kids' college fund, our retirement money, all because our son gambled on the internet.
I said I was sorry.
Go to your box.
Internet gambling. It's a scam. If you play, you pay.
Mexia supermarket footage. One of the biggest finds this year happens to be a piece of lost media that I didn't think would become as popular as it did, but here we are. It's definitely the morbid curiosity kicking in. I'll admit, even I was pretty curious, despite this being one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard about. So, quick warning if you're eating anything right now. A lot of you have probably heard about this already though, due to how simply infamous it is. Essentially, a grocery store in Fort Worth, Texas, called Mexia Supermarket, was shut down after its owners declared bankruptcy in 1999. Nothing too unusual there. Businesses fail, these things happen. What doesn't happen often is the owners, banks, and whoever at the time owned the property turning off the electricity and then leaving the store without first cleaning it out. This was said to have occurred because of a miscommunication between the owners of the store and the creditors who were taking it back. Either way, someone messed up, and the electricity was cut off and the store abandoned, leaving the produce and meat to spoil and rot inside the store, creating an unimaginable smell, which attracted, of course, every manner of possible vermin to the establishment. The building became overrun with all types of insects and rodents. They began consuming all of the leftover product and spoiled inventory, which in turn allowed more of them to reproduce. And yeah, this whole thing was just a recipe for disaster, causing a complete biohazardous environment. People began smelling something was off all the way down the street and complained of the stench, leading to an investigation, which would have the Fort Worth Health Department declaring the store a health hazard. Investigators and cleanup crew who entered the store had to wear air filtration masks to even breathe. There were reportedly rats and roaches all over the store, and so many flies that they could barely see in front of them. With this being such a gross and strange event in the city of Fort Worth, many news channels were able to gather footage, mostly though from outside the store. Most of the recordings found of inside the actual building come from an episode of the show Life After People. This year though, a TikTok user by the name of Juice would upload a few videos about the Mexia Supermarket, which included footage taken by their parents of them driving past the store in November of 1999, as well as some news footage of a separate disturbing incident which took place in the store in 1994, in which a man was murdered, which still remains unsolved today. After this, there was even more renewed interest in the case, and a few more images and small pieces of footage were located, but on July 18th, 2025, a user named Biscuit uploaded a compilation video of two separate news station recordings of the store, KXAS and CONUS, featuring over 10 minutes of inside and outside the store taken in 1999. The Mitch Hedberg Project pilot. The Mitch Hedberg Project was a show pitched to MTV in 2001 that would follow the stand-up comedian in question, along with his friends, as they did a 7-day tour around California and interviewed people on the street, did other stand-up comedy gigs, and even pranks. A pitch pilot was created which was partially available on YouTube, dated July 17th, 2001, despite the project never getting picked up by MTV. The only footage that could be found from the 27-minute pilot was featured in a documentary named after one of the other comedians on tour with Hedberg, nicknamed Possum Man. Another one of Hedberg's friends and fellow comic, Doug Stanhope, uploaded a rough-cut VHS copy to YouTube on June 1st, 2025, where it can still be viewed today. Nick News with Linda Ellerby, Muhammad Ali. Nick News was an educational news program airing from 1992 to 2015 on Nickelodeon in an attempt to make the format of a news broadcast discussing social, economic, and political issues more easily digestible for younger audiences. The show was hosted by NBC newscaster Linda Ellerby during its original run, but it was brought back pretty recently on social media, having both TikTok and Instagram pages. The original show was quite popular in schools, which is why it went on for so long, despite relatively poor ratings. Over 178 episodes were created from 1992 to 2015, and due to the show's relative scarcity following its cancellation, as well as the fact that only one home media release was ever created, many of the episodes today are lost. Some have been found and are available on YouTube in their entirety, while some only have partial clips and others are completely lost. One of the episodes found this year was Nick News Presents the Life Story of Muhammad Ali, detailing the life of the famous boxer and cultural icon. They even had interviews with other celebrities influenced in one way or another by the life of the heavyweight champion, including comedian Chris Brown and basketball legend Michael Jordan. The full 26-minute episode was uploaded to archive.org on August 24th of this year, where it remains watchable today. The Cure for Insomnia footage. The Cure for Insomnia is a piece of lost media I feel like I've already extensively talked about on this channel on at least more than one occasion, so I'll keep this one kinda short, as the entire 87-hour-long film didn't end up getting found, sadly, just some small footage from it. Still definitely a cool find though. But yes, basically this experimental movie was one of the longest ever produced, sitting at an astounding 87-hour mark, created by John Henry Timmis IV back in 1987. The movie simply consisted of actor L.D. Grobin reading a poem also titled The Cure for Insomnia, which itself was over 4,000 pages long. On March 1st of 2025, a company called Bleeding Skull released a collection of Timmis's filmography as a Blu-ray titled Cannibal Orgy, which contained a minute and 25-second snippet from the film. Admittedly, not much is shown other than a copyright notice, as well as some title cards, and a seemingly random explosion. Horrid Henry pitch pilot. Based on a children's book series of the same name, created by Francesca Simon, this British animated children's series ran from October 2006 to May of 2019, for a total of 5 seasons and 250 episodes, following the life of the eponymous Henry, playing pranks and getting up to hijinks with his friends, in direct opposition to his younger opposite brother Peter. The series became popular not just in the UK, but even internationally as well, being broadcast in over 90 countries throughout the world in various other languages. Also, like many cartoons of the era, the show was pitched with a pilot episode that was not shown to audiences outside of the executives that greenlit the project. It wouldn't be until August of 2025 that this episode would end up surfacing online. This short 1 minute and 20-second episode was known as Horrid Henry, Utterly Wicked, Totally Brilliant, and was uploaded to YouTube by user The Shampoo is Broken. Bananas in Pajamas, Odd Socks. Bananas in Pajamas was an Australian children's TV series which ran from July 1992 to December of 2001 for 6 seasons and 304 episodes. Inspired by the success of the 1967 song of the same name, the series follows 2 anthropomorphic banana characters called B1 and B2 and showcases their many adventures with their rat and teddy bear friends. Most of the episodes of the show were readily available except for 2, episode 162 Self-Serve and 198 Odd Socks, both airing in season 4 back in 1996. That all changed this year, however, when a YouTube channel named Johnson and Naughty uploaded the entire Odd Socks episode to YouTube on April 13th. That leaves only episode 162, Self-Serve, as the last missing episode of the show. Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro Thor cutscene. Here is sort of a deep cut from the early 2000s. Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro, released in 2001 for the PlayStation 1, is an infamously censored game which was changed quite a lot after the events of September 11th, leading to its release being delayed and many elements being changed, including certain scenes taking place at the World Trade Center, where an alleged scene involving Thor was said to take place. An urban legend was created about a scene at the end of the game, which reported that there was at one point a planned cameo from Thor towards the end of the game, which would take place on top of the World Trade Center, hence why it was cut. However, for a long time, there was no proof of this scene's existence, which led many to believe it was simply a myth or a rumor. This theory was furthered even more when an older build of the game before the 9/11 changes were made was found and leaked online, and did not contain the alleged Thor sequence. Like many lost media mysteries, it became an urban legend, with only reports of people claiming to have seen the cutscene on YouTube, but no evidence to back the claims. However, a dedicated user named Spider Glider in June of 2023 was able to find an image using the Wayback Machine on Activision's Spider-Man website to locate a screenshot of Thor in the game, proving that it was actually real. Still, it wouldn't be until a few years later, until September of 2025, that the actual cutscene would be made available by user BobbyFan85, who posted the clip to r/lostmedia, saying they had downloaded it years ago on one of their old hard drives, way back in October of 2001. Here is the full cutscene in its entirety.
If I don't dispose of them, some other goon will make a try for it. Next time, it could be Ultron, or someone even heavier. First things first, though. If I don't dispose of them, some other goon will make a try for it. Next time, it could be Ultron, or someone even heavier. First things first, though. Now, what's this all about? I've already beaten the bad guy and saved the day.
By mine enchanted Uru Malat Mjolnir, I sense disturbances in the Furies that are the providence of the noble son of Asgard and none other.
Hi, Thor. Nice of you to show up. Little late, though.
Spider-Man? Surely thou doth not possess power enow to make the very heavens shake as they did?
Not me. He doth. I mean, or did.
Once again, thou hast proven thy mettle as a warrior born. Fare thee well, webbed one.
Thanks for the cameo, though, really. Thunder gods. Huh? Oh, thanks! Hey, a little warning next time would be nice. You're not looking so hot, Electro.
Rabbids Invasion. Finally, my time to shine. Honestly, not really. I only ever played the first Rayman Raving Rabbids game, but it is still one of my favorites from my childhood. True PS2 nostalgia right there. Today, these guys are more so seen as the minions of the gaming industry, and well, can you really blame them for that? They are kind of obnoxious. There is an animated TV series of the same name, released in 2013, based on the games, with over 400 episodes. But this is actually a completely different thing. Created by Ubisoft Paris and released in April of 2012, this was a Facebook game where you play as the Rabbids, invading the world and doing quests in either single player or multiplayer. And you basically just assign Rabbids to invade people's houses and gather resources. The game was very obscure though, with not much info or videos on the game at all, as it was shut down not long after its launch in January of 2013, making the game lost media. The title was finally located this year, with multiple different builds being found by Discord user Kenny_real, who uploaded the game files to Mega in October of 2025. Ratchet & Clank Clone Home. Here we have a mobile game spin-off of the Ratchet & Clank series created by Insomniac Games. This title was actually a sequel to another mobile game from 2005 called Ratchet & Clank Going Mobile, which, as you can imagine, was a pretty basic platformer given when it was released. The sequel was announced the following year and was planned to include more weapons and as much as 15 different stages before the game ended up being cancelled, despite it being essentially finished. Only a few screenshots were available from the game for decades. That was until October of 2025, when a build of the game was found by a dedicated group of fans who cracked an old phone that contained the game. YouTuber The Golden Bolt did a full deep dive into how the game was found, alongside a review of the actual game itself, which was released the day it was made available. Just Can't Let Her Go. Just Can't Let Her Go is an unreleased song from the band One Direction. Originally, it was thought to be included on the album Midnight Memories, but was actually nowhere to be found. In August of 2013, 2 minutes of the song were leaked onto YouTube. One of the demo uploads has garnered since over 4 million views. Again though, this wasn't the full track. Finally though, in October of 2025, the full 3-minute version ended up leaking online, and it can now be found on YouTube. Virtual League Baseball 2. There are quite a lot of lost and cancelled Virtual Boy games, thanks to this console being one of Nintendo's biggest flops. One of these titles was called Virtual Pro Yakyu 96, or Virtual League Baseball 2 in English. It was a sequel to Virtual Pro Yakyu 95. It was planned to have multiplayer, using an unreleased add-on called the Game Link Cable to link two of these things together, which definitely sounds interesting. For the 30th anniversary of the release of the Virtual Boy, a user named Thrown Away revealed the English version, which he had located on July 21st, 2025. The God and Devil Show Lost Episodes. The God and Devil Show is a web series created by Aubrey Ankrum, known for also co-creating Happy Tree Friends, another adult animated series. The God and Devil Show is a satire of celebrity talk shows, which features God and the Devil interviewing celebrities and determining whether they should go to heaven or hell, which the viewer actually gets to decide, with there being a hell and heaven segment for each episode. The show ran from 1999 to 2001 for a total of 54 episodes. Some of these episodes were made available on YouTube, but not all. More would be found over the years, but many were still missing, including full episodes, but also partial segments. Full episodes of The Osmonds, Christopher Walken, and Jesse Ventura would be found in early 2025, as well as the Abraham Lincoln episode in May of this year. As of making this video, only 4 episodes are fully lost, while some still have a few missing sections. Donna and the Wolfman commercials. Airing in Atlanta, Georgia through the 80s to the late 90s and even the early 2000s were the Donna and Wolfman commercials, advertising a local family furniture store called Gallery Furniture, which was created by Doyle Rogers, nicknamed Wolfman, alongside his daughter Donna. The ads became quite popular in the local community thanks to the catchphrase of "Ask the Wolfman," as well as the sheer amount of commercials produced, somewhere in the ballpark of about 500 according to estimations, created all throughout Wolfman's career until his eventual passing in 2004. Many of these commercials are still missing and have never been found. A ton of them were found this year, most of which were just found in old YouTube uploads. Still, they are quite wholesome and I'm sure nostalgic for those who lived in the area and grew up with these commercials.
Donna here for Gallery Furniture. While Wolfman is off at some ball game, I'm here to sell as much furniture as I can.
Hey, I'm at the Turner Cup Champion Atlanta Nights game. You can be here too. Register to win tickets to Gallery Furniture.
Come to Gallery Furniture to register and get great bargains on this 4-piece bedroom suite, $259. This Queen Anne chair for only $88. Wolfman, are you wearing another silly tie?
Yes, I am.
Come in today at Gallery Furniture, 2511 Roosevelt Highway in College Park and 1600 Brownsbridge Road in Gainesville. Ask for Donna.
Her First Egg in 1931. Here we have another found animated short, all the way back from 1931, created by Terry Toons Animation Studios. It is a very old piece of British animated history, which is why it was preserved by the British Film Institute National Archive and was subsequently uploaded to YouTube, where it can be viewed today, on October 23rd, 2025. The short depicts a hen laying an egg and raising the chick, with a surprise cameo from Mickey Mouse shooting at birds from his airplane. Electric Nebraska. This is referring to the famous 1982 album Nebraska by American singer Bruce Springsteen. It was his 6th studio album and has been applauded by both critics and fans over the many years, becoming one of his best-selling albums. Initial demos for the tracks were created by Springsteen without the accompaniment of his E Street Band, which were actually preferred to the studio recordings with all members present, preferring to use the demo recordings for the album itself, and yeah, the rest is history. This electric version, as it's known, using full instruments and band members, was shelved and only saw the light of day following the release of the film Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere, which details an account of Springsteen creating the Nebraska album back in the 80s. The movie released on October 24th, 2025 in the United States, alongside the Electric Nebraska studio version. Christmas Dreams. Christmas Dreams is a relatively obscure musical TV special which aired only once on CBC back in December of 2009, telling the story of a girl named Sam who is able to once again grow to love Christmas and finds gifts for her family through the help of a shop owner named Rose. The special became rare after its first initial airing and was only ever aired on obscure networks a few times, but never again on CBC. There was also no home media or streaming releases. No shocker here that it ended up becoming lost media over the years. The film was finally found though on October 27th, 2025 by Romy Robinson, who was able to get a copy from one of the original crew members and later uploaded it to the Internet Archive, where it can be viewed today. Robot Crobot Pilot. Robot Crobot is an obscure Polish animated series created by Catmood Animations and airing on the forfun.tv network, with 30 episodes of the show being produced about a friendly robot and his adventures throughout outer space and elsewhere. The show aired in the late 2000s, and after its initial run, became fairly rare. Today, only a pilot episode as well as the first 21 episodes have been found, and partial footage from episode 22 as well, but episodes 23 through 30, as of now, are still completely lost. The pilot was located this year though, and uploaded to YouTube on October 31st, 2025, where it can be viewed alongside other Cat Mood projects and pilot episodes. Splatterworld. Splatterworld is an unreleased Famicom game from 1993 and a spin-off of the Splatterhouse series, specifically a sequel to the title Splatterhouse Wanpaku Graffiti, which was made for the Famicom back in 1989 and was a horror-inspired beat-em-up with parodied horror icons making an appearance, such as Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger lookalikes. Unfortunately, this RPG sequel was cancelled before it was ever released, but seemingly at random this year, someone leaked the ROM onto 4chan, showing the game in a completely playable state, dropping on Halloween of 2025. Good Trick. Good Trick is yet another piece of animation history, being one of the first examples of using computer animation for tracing complicated hand-drawn shots. It was a 1984 animated short film which may have inspired a similar technique used in the Disney film The Great Mouse Detective. Either way, this preceded that example from 1986. It follows a magician named Mr. Mysterio, who has an assistant rabbit that takes his magic wand and starts performing magic tricks of his own, much to the magician's annoyance. It was shown off at multiple film festivals and even aired on networks like HBO and Cinemax, but even still, after winning awards for its innovation in animation and airing on HBO, it still ended up becoming lost media. One of the film's animators and the movie's director were both contacted about the lost film, and responded saying that they did have copies of the movie, but lacked the equipment to digitize the film and make it available. Though the short was fully recovered and uploaded to YouTube this year by Lost Media Wiki user Daniel Video on November 4th of 2025, who claimed to have acquired it from a VHS recording that he found at a thrift store. The Jersey. The Jersey is a lesser-known Disney Channel series that aired from 1999 to 2004 for 3 seasons and 64 episodes. It has a pretty interesting premise, I must say. It follows a group of kids that find a magical sports jersey, which allows them to be placed into the bodies of famous athletes or sports icons like Tony Hawk, with these celebrities typically making guest appearances on the show. It has not come to any streaming platform since its initial run, not even Disney's own streaming service Disney Plus, and there was no home media release either, making the show quite rare over the years. For a while, less than half of the episodes were fully available online as of 2023, though over time, episodes were slowly uploaded and the catalog slowly but steadily filled out. Thankfully though, this year, on November 7th, 2025, Lost Media Wiki user Skyzord uploaded all of the episodes, making the series almost complete, except for only one missing chapter from Season 2, Episode 11, Star Tutor. Besides that, the series has been fully recovered.